Okay, so you know how you're already pretty awesome at English. Like you can follow those super complex discussions and write these really nuanced emails.
Right.
But then sometimes when you're just chatting, in a casual conversation,
Yeah.
does it ever feel like your speaking could be a bit smoother? Like a little less hesitant? Or maybe you just don't sound quite as natural as you'd like?
That's a really interesting point. A lot of people who've gotten really good at English, they reach a stage where they can understand almost everything.
Yeah.
But then they feel kind of stuck,
Yeah.
Like they can understand it all, but they don't quite sound like a native speaker when they talk.
For sure. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
Awesome.
We're going to uncover 7 really powerful strategies
Okay.
that can help you refine your spoken English, get rid of any stiffness,
Right.
and help you talk more naturally and effortlessly, just like a native speaker.
I like it.
So the first thing we're going to tackle is practicing speaking spontaneously under pressure.
Ooh, that sounds kind of scary.
I know, right? But hear me out.
Okay.
So think about it. Real fluency isn't just about knowing a ton of words. It's about being able to think and speak at the same time,
Yeah.
without overthinking or planning every word.
Like in a real conversation.
Exactly.
Huh.
And a bit of pressure can actually help you get better at this.
So how do we do that? Add some pressure. I mean,
Here's a cool exercise.
okay.
Pick a topic, something kind of complex,
Yeah.
to get those brain juices flowing.
Like what?
Let's say, is social media ultimately helpful or harmful?
Okay. Interesting.
Set a timer for like 2 minutes.
2 minutes only.
Yep. And here's the catch. You got to start talking right away.
Oh, wow.
No planning, no outlining, no nothing.
Just go.
Exactly. Just start talking and don't stop until that timer goes off.
This sounds tough.
It is. And don't worry about making mistakes or being perfect.
Okay.
The goal is to just keep those words flowing.
Got it.
And you know what's really cool about this? It actually makes your brain work harder to remember the words and grammar you already know.
Ah, so it's like a workout for our brains.
Exactly.
Ugh.
And here's the step that might feel a little weird, but trust me, it's super helpful.
Is it?
Record yourself while you're doing this exercise.
Oh, no. I hate listening to my own voice.
I know. But it's not about judging yourself.
Right.
It's about noticing where you hesitate, where you search for the right word.
Ah, I see.
Those little stumbles that happen when we speak?
Yeah.
And then do the exercise again, maybe with the same topic or a different one.
Okay.
And you'll probably be amazed at how much smoother and faster you sound.
So it's like practicing and seeing the improvement.
Exactly. It's like training your brain to be ready for those real-life conversations.
Makes sense.
All right, so let's move on to our next tip.
Okay. Ready.
This one's about leveling up your use of filler words and natural pauses.
Wait, filler words? But I thought we were supposed to get rid of those.
I know, right? And we're always told to avoid saying, and.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Native speakers actually use filler words all the time. Yeah. But they use them strategically, Like instead of just dead air or those awkward ums,
Yeah.
they use phrases like, let me think about that for a second, or I'm not entirely sure, but here's my take on it.
That does sound more natural.
Right. And it gives you a moment to gather your thoughts without sounding lost.
I see your point.
And these strategic pauses and phrases, they actually help make your speech sound smoother.
Okay, so how do we get better at using these natural pauses and fillers?
One of the best ways is to pay close attention to how native speakers do it.
Like eavesdropping on their conversations.
Haha, sort of. I mean, listen to podcasts, watch TED Talks, things like that.
Okay.
But don't just focus on the content.
Yeah.
Pay attention to how they deliver their message.
Ah, like when and how they pause.
Exactly, and what phrases they use to connect their ideas or to stall for time.
Cool.
And try that. And here are a few phrases you can start using right away.
Yummy.
Well, to be honest, that's a really interesting question. That one buys you some thinking time. And let me rephrase that to make sure I'm being clear.
I like these.
See, it's not about speaking super fast.
Yeah.
It's about sounding confident and comfortable, even when you need a moment to think.
Right. It's about the rhythm.
Precisely. It's about making your speech sound natural with those rises and falls.
Makes sense.
Okay, ready for tip number 3?
Always.
This one's all about reframing and reformulating your ideas.
So like saying things in different ways.
Exactly. Instead of just giving a simple yes or no answer,
Yeah.
try to elaborate and add some nuance to what you're saying.
Got it.
So instead of just saying, yes, I agree, you could say something like, absolutely. And that makes me think about a broader trend that we often overlook.
Wow, that sounds so much better.
Right. It shows you're really engaged in thinking deeply about the topic.
I like it.
And here's a little challenge for you.
Hit me.
Take a simple phrase like, I enjoyed that,
Okay.
and try to say it in at least 3 different ways.
I'm a big fan of that. Or maybe that really resonated with me, or even that was surprisingly effective.
Perfect. You see, you can express the same idea in so many different ways.
And that makes you sound more fluent.
Exactly. It adds variety and makes your speech less predictable, more like a native speaker.
I'm starting to see the pattern here.
Good. Now, tip number 4 is about immersion, but with a twist.
A twist.
Yeah, it's called watch, repeat, imitate.
Sounds intense.
It is, but in a good way.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So you probably already watch movies or TV shows in English, right?
Yeah, of course.
But this time we're going to do it with a specific goal in mind,
Which is?
to actively improve your speaking skills.
Ah, I see.
It's not just about understanding the story anymore.
Right.
It's about really paying attention to how native speakers talk.
Okay.
So here's the drill.
I'm ready.
First, choose a short clip, maybe 30 seconds long.
Got it.
Then listen carefully and write down exactly what the speaker said.
Exactly, like word for word.
Yep, no paraphrasing or summarizing.
Wow, this is going to be tough.
It is, but it's worth it.
Okay.
And finally, the fun part, repeat the clip out loud and try to imitate the speaker's tone and energy.
So like I'm acting.
Kinda. It's about getting those sounds and rhythms into your system.
Interesting.
And here's another tip. Choose content that aligns with your goals.
What do you mean?
Well, if you want to get better at expressing emotions, watch some drama shows.
Okay.
If you need to improve your business English, listen to podcasts or interviews.
Makes sense.
And for everyday slang and casual talk, sitcoms are your best friend.
Cool. I can definitely do that.
The key is to absorb how native speakers use the language, not just what they say.
Right. It's about the delivery.
Exactly. And by imitating them, you're training your brain to use those patterns naturally.
Like building muscle memory for speaking.
You got it. Now, are you ready for tip number 5?
Bring it on.
This one's about playing with tone, emotion, and intonation.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
It is. Because, native speakers don't just say words.
Right.
They perform them.
Yeah.
They bring them to life.
Yeah. I get it.
Think about it. The same sentence can have totally different meanings depending on how you say it.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Let's take a simple question. Are you serious?
Okay.
Now imagine saying it with anger, then with surprise, then with sarcasm.
Whoa. Yeah, the meaning completely changes.
Right. So here's a fun exercise for you.
I'm listening.
Record yourself saying a short sentence with different emotions.
Okay.
Like happy, sad, angry, excited,
Got it.
It might feel a little silly at first,
Uh-huh.
but it'll make you much more aware of how you use your voice.
And that's important for fluency.
Absolutely. Because native-like fluency isn't just about grammar and vocabulary.
Yeah.
It's also about being able to express yourself fully with your voice.
Emotions and all.
Exactly. All right, moving on to tip number 6.
Okay, what's next?
This one's about role-playing complex situations.
Role-playing, like actors do.
Kinda. But in this case, it's about preparing yourself for challenging conversations. So you might be pretty comfortable with everyday English, ordering food, chatting with friends.
Yeah, for sure.
But what about those tougher situations?
Like what?
Like negotiating a raise, explaining a complicated topic to someone,
Oh, yeah, those can be tricky.
or even dealing with a conflict at work.
Right.
These situations require a different level of fluency and confidence.
Yeah, sure.
So here's the challenge. Pick one of those scenarios and imagine you're actually in that moment.
Okay.
And then just start talking out loud for a couple of minutes.
Let's say what?
Whatever comes to mind, as if you were really in that situation.
Like a practice run.
Exactly. For example, let's say you're practicing a salary negotiation.
Okay.
You could start by saying something like, as we discussed in my performance review, I've consistently exceeded expectations in my role, and I'm confident that my contributions have significantly benefited the team.
Wow, that sounds so professional.
Right. And the more you practice like this, the more natural and confident you'll sound when you face those situations in real life.
So it's like pre-programming my brain for success.
You got it. Now for our final tip, number 7.
I can't believe we're already on the last one.
I know time flies when you're having fun.
Right.
Okay, so this last tip is all about self-reflection, or what I like to call talking to yourself like a coach.
Talking to myself, that sounds kind of crazy.
I know, it might sound strange, but trust me, it works.
Okay, I'm willing to try anything at this point.
Good. So basically, at the end of each day, take a few minutes to ask yourself some questions out loud.
Like what kind of questions?
Things like, what did I do well in English today? What could I have said better? Or what new expression did I learn?
I never really thought about asking myself those questions before.
But it's super helpful.
Go so.
What makes you more aware of your strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
And it helps you focus on what you need to improve.
Makes sense.
And here's a bonus tip. If you keep a journal, try speaking your entries before you write them down.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It'll help you connect your spoken and written English and make your writing sound more natural too.
Cool. I'll definitely try that.
Awesome. So do you want to do a quick practice drill together to put some of these tips into action?
Sure, I'm game.
All right, here's the topic. How has technology changed your life?
Okay.
I want you to talk for about a minute and try to use some of the techniques we've discussed.
Okay, let me think.
Like, you could start by saying something like, technology has completely revolutionized the way I live, from how I work to how I connect with people. I can't imagine life without things like instant messaging or video calls.
Okay, I think I can do that.
Great. And remember to pay attention to your tone and try to rephrase your ideas in different ways.
I'm ready.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, well, technology has definitely had a huge impact on my life. Like, I rely on it for pretty much everything these days, from staying in touch with family and friends who live far away to learning new things online, and even just for entertainment, you know? But sometimes I do feel like I'm too connected, like I need to take a break from my phone and computer every now and then. But overall, I think technology has made my life much easier and more efficient.
Awesome. See, that wasn't so hard, was it?
Not at all, actually. It was kind of fun.
Good. And you did a great job of incorporating some of the tips.
Thanks.
So just to recap quickly,
Okay.
we talked about 7 powerful strategies for achieving advanced fluency.
Let's hear them.
First, practice speaking spontaneously under pressure.
Check.
Master the art of using filler words and natural pauses.
Got it.
Reframe your sentences in different ways.
For sure.
Immerse yourself actively by watching and imitating native speakers.
Doing it.
Deliberately add tone and emotion to your delivery.
Sounds good.
Simulate real-world roles through practice. And make reflective speaking a regular habit.
I will.
And remember, you've already come so far in your English journey.
Yeah, that's true.
This is just about refining those skills and becoming even more confident and fluent.
I like the sound of that.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Embrace those challenges and keep practicing.
You know what? I think I'm ready to take my English to the next level.
That's the spirit. And remember, your English is powerful. Own it.
I will. Thanks for the encouragement.
You're welcome, and thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Anytime.
That's it for today, folks. Keep practicing and keep speaking with confidence. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, welcome back.
Now, if you're here, you probably already get a good bit of English.
Yeah.
I mean, you can read articles, maybe watch movies,
Yeah.
and handle basic conversations, but
Right.
there's this feeling of wanting your spoken English to be like way smoother, to feel more natural.
Yeah.
Maybe even sound a bit more, like a native speaker. And that's
Yeah.
what we're going to be focusing on today.
That's what we're focusing on.
Yeah.
Many learners, they get to this point where, they understand a lot. It's not the big challenge anymore. It's really that fluency.
Right.
It's bridging that gap to confident and fluent speaking.
Yeah. So that's exactly what our mission is in this deep dive, to equip you with 7 smart and I would say pretty practical techniques to help you on your journey to speaking more fluently.
Exactly. And these aren't just abstract ideas. They're things you can actually start doing right away to boost how fluently you speak,
Yes.
Get better control of your English vocabulary when you're talking and build that confidence.
Exactly.
That's so important.
That speaking confidence. Yeah. Are you ready to dive into these tips?
Absolutely. Let's start with one that might sound a little unusual.
Okay.
Shadowing native speakers daily.
Okay, shadowing. So let's break down what shadowing actually means.
Right.
It means you're going to listen to someone who speaks English fluently and then immediately repeat what they say.
Yes.
But the trick here is to really try and focus on how they say it.
The how.
Yes, their tone of voice, the rhythm of their speech, and how they pronounce each word.
And it's less about, consciously thinking about the grammar.
Yeah.
It's more about just imitating.
Yes.
Intuitively imitating and feeling.
Almost absorbing it.
Yeah, absorbing it, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's almost like learning a new song. I mean, you don't dissect all the musical notes.
Right.
First, you just try to sing along
Right.
and match the singer.
Yeah.
So think about it this way. Imagine hearing someone say, "I'm not sure what I want for dinner." You would then say, "I'm not sure what I want for dinner."
I'm not sure what I want for dinner.
Exactly.
So it's just...
You're like their shadow.
Yes, you're like their shadow.
That's why it's called shadowing.
Okay, I get it.
And, the power of shadowing really comes from just doing it a little bit every day.
Yeah.
It's consistency.
Yes.
It's regular exposure and active repetition.
Yeah. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Every single day.
Even just 5 minutes each day can make a huge difference over time.
I think that's the key with a lot of this stuff, too, is like
Absolutely.
not trying to bite off more than you can chew.
Little and often.
Yes.
That's it.
Just like get a little bit better every single day.
Totally. And finding stuff to shadow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy these days.
Oh, yeah.
YouTube is full of great content.
YouTube podcasts.
Yeah, tons of short podcasts.
Movies, TV shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You can even use scenes from your favorite movies or TV shows.
And you can even like slow it down
Oh, yeah.
if you need to.
Absolutely.
Rewind it. Speed it up, slow it down,
Yeah.
rewind it, listen again and again and again.
And the cool thing is that it can be anything that you're actually interested in.
That's it. Pick something you're interested in.
Yeah.
And then it's not like this horrible chore,
Exactly. It's fun.
It's fun. It's enjoyable.
Yeah. So why is this so effective?
Oh.
What is it about shadowing that makes it so good for your English?
Well, it helps build what we might call muscle memory for speaking.
Okay.
Your mouth and your brain get used to forming the sounds and the intonation patterns more automatically.
So you don't have to think about it as much.
You don't have to think about every single syllable.
You're just like,
It just comes out.
yeah, it just flows out.
It just flows, yeah.
That's what we want.
That's what we want.
All right, let's move on to tip number 2.
Okay, number 2.
Use speaking prompts daily.
Daily.
Okay, so a really common challenge that a lot of English learners have is they just don't know what to talk about
Yes.
when they want to practice speaking.
That's so true.
It's like, you should speak,
Right.
but then your mind goes blank.
Yes. And how do you create those opportunities to practice
Right.
speaking even when you don't have someone there to talk to?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking prompts, the answer is simple speaking prompts.
Okay. Yeah.
Every day, choose a topic. Anything that pops into your head.
Anything.
Anything.
Whatever you feel like.
Yeah, and then just speak out loud about it for 1 to 2 minutes.
It could be absolutely anything.
Anything.
What did you have for breakfast this morning?
Yeah.
Or what's your favorite color?
What are you going to do after this? What's the weather like today?
Exactly. So what's so valuable about using these prompts is it kind of forces you
Yeah.
to generate spontaneous speech. You've got to pull vocabulary from your memory, and you've got to construct sentences in real time.
Like on the fly.
On the fly, exactly.
Okay.
It's good practice for thinking on your feet in English.
I like that thinking on your feet.
Yeah.
So to give you some ideas to get started, here's a couple example prompts. What's your morning routine? Describe your dream job, or what do you usually do on the weekends?
It could be as simple as that.
Simple as that.
What do you do on the weekends?
Exactly.
And I think the most important thing to remember with prompts is to start simple.
Yes.
Don't get discouraged.
You don't have to be perfect.
You don't have to be perfect. No one's expecting perfection here.
No.
It's really just about getting comfortable with
Yes.
speaking.
It's about building that confidence
Building that confidence. That's
and
it.
focusing on the flow.
The flow.
More than like,
Then getting every single word perfect.
yes.
And every grammar point perfect. Just keep talking.
Just keep talking.
That's the main thing.
Which leads us perfectly into tip number 3.
Number 3.
Expand your sentences.
Oh, this is a good one.
This is a good one. So, sometimes you might give a very short, direct answer to a question.
Yeah. Like, I like music.
I like music. Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing grammatically wrong with that.
Of course not.
But it doesn't really showcase,
It doesn't show off all your English skills.
It doesn't show up your full potential.
Yeah, so instead of just saying, I like music, what could you say?
You could say something like, I really enjoy listening to music, especially pop and jazz. I usually listen when I'm walking or when I'm cooking.
I really enjoy listening to music, especially pop and jazz. I usually listen when I'm walking or when I'm cooking.
Yeah.
Oh, see how much better that sounds.
You've added so much more information
Yes.
in just a few words.
And it's so much more interesting to listen to.
Way more interesting.
So what's going on there? What are we adding to make those sentences longer and more interesting?
Well, we're adding details.
Details.
We're adding reasons and we're giving examples.
Reasons and examples.
Yeah, and that makes your speaking sound more fluent.
Uh-huh.
It allows you to express more nuanced ideas.
Right.
And it shows that you have a better command of all the different resources of the language.
So are we kind of anticipating the questions that someone might ask us?
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Because if you just say, I like music, someone might say, oh, what kind of music do you like?
Yeah.
When do you listen to music?
Right.
So we're kind of preempting those questions
Okay.
by putting them all into one longer sentence.
So we're making it easier for the listener.
We're making it easier for the listener, and we're also making ourselves sound more impressive
Yes.
because we can show off all this great vocabulary.
So of those English skills.
Yeah.
I like it. And when you can do that, I feel like that would really boost your confidence as well.
Totally. Because if you can articulate, your thoughts and preferences with more detail and more, complexity, you naturally feel more capable, more in control, and confident.
Yeah, more confident, exactly.
Okay, so tip number 4 is all about shifting your internal dialogue.
Okay.
This is a big one. Think in English, not your native language.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
I know this can feel like a massive leap.
Right.
It is a big leap.
For a lot of learners.
Yeah, but it's so important.
It is because, the natural inclination is to translate everything from your native language to English in your head.
Yeah, word for word.
Word for word. And that translation process.
It slows you down.
It's slow.
Yeah.
And it really hinders your fluency.
It really does. So the goal here is to train yourself to think directly in English.
Yes, to bypass that translation step.
Yes, skip the middleman, just go straight to English.
Straight to English, yeah. And I know it sounds daunting.
It does.
But you can start with really small exercises.
Small little baby steps.
Baby steps. That's it.
Like what?
Like just describe the things that you see around you in English.
Okay.
So look around the room now and just think to yourself.
Okay. That's a microphone.
That's a microphone.
The wall is white.
The wall is white.
My chair is black.
Exactly.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
Okay.
And you can also talk to yourself in English
Oh, yeah.
when you're making a to-do list.
I do.
You do that.
I do that.
So say it out loud.
Yeah, actually do that.
In English.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I need to go to the bank later.
I need to send that email.
I need to send that email.
I need to finish this episode.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's like little things like that that really start to add up.
And the benefit is that you start to build these connections between concepts and English words.
Without the translation.
Without that intermediary translation step.
Yeah.
And that ultimately leads to, faster, more natural, and more spontaneous speech.
That's what we want.
That's the goal.
All right. Tip number 5, use English in real life.
This is a good one.
Now, this one might seem a little obvious.
It seems obvious, but so many people don't do it.
Yeah, so many people don't actively seek out
Yes.
opportunities.
To use their English in everyday life.
And that's why we're talking about it, because it's so important.
It is important.
Because it takes your English learning beyond the textbook.
Beyond the textbook.
Yes, and into
The real world.
Yes, into the real world. It's making English a functional tool.
A tool you can use.
Yeah, not just something you're studying.
Exactly.
So give us some ideas, some actionable advice. How can we use English in real life?
Well, there are loads of small changes you can make.
Okay.
Change the language on your phone to English.
Or
Write your shopping list in English.
Uh-huh.
Watch movies in English.
Listen to music in English.
Listen to music.
Yeah.
Read books in English.
If you have friends or family who speak English, talk to them in English.
Even just for a few minutes,
Yeah, just a little bit. Every single day, it all adds up.
It all adds up.
It's all about those habits.
And those small, consistent habits,
Yes.
they really reinforce your learning.
Yeah.
And they gradually shift your perception of English
Okay.
from something you study to something you use.
I like that because, let's be honest, the English that you're going to use in real life is different from the English that's in the textbook.
Very different.
Yeah, it's more informal.
Yes, more dynamic.
And there are more of those natural expressions that we've talked about.
Exactly. You pick up on all those nuances, the idioms, the slang, the common phrases that you wouldn't necessarily get from a textbook.
The stuff that makes you sound more like a native speaker.
Exactly.
Okay. Tip number 6, what to do when you make a mistake.
Okay.
Correct yourself out loud.
Oh, this is a good one.
This is so important.
So important.
Because everybody makes mistakes.
Everyone makes mistakes. Especially
with a learning process.
Yeah, especially when you're learning something new.
Absolutely.
Like a new language.
Don't let it discourage you.
Do not let it discourage you. Mistakes are your friend.
Mistakes are our friends.
They are.
They help us to learn.
They show us.
They show us where we need to improve.
Exactly. So the key is not to avoid making mistakes.
Yeah.
The key is to learn from the mistakes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well, when you're speaking and you realize you said something wrong, take a pause, breathe, And then repeat the sentence correctly.
Correctly.
Yeah.
Okay, so give us an example.
So let's say you say, he go to the park yesterday.
He go to the park yesterday.
You then stop yourself and say, oops, he went to the park yesterday.
He went to the park yesterday.
Okay.
And by saying the correct form out loud, you're more likely to remember it.
Yep. You're reinforcing.
Reinforcing it. Yeah. And another good technique is to record yourself
Oh, this is a good one.
speaking and then listen back.
Yeah.
And when you listen back, you can identify.
You could hear your mistakes.
You hear your mistakes.
And then you know what to work on.
And then you know what to work on.
And you can listen to like, oh, how do native speakers say that?
I exactly too. It's like being your own teacher.
It is like being your own teacher. Yeah, I like that. So tip number 7, talk about the same topic in different ways.
This is a fun one.
Yeah, so what's the point of this? Why should we talk about the same topic in different ways?
Well, it helps you to become more flexible
Okay.
and more expressive.
Okay.
Seek.
And expand your vocabulary.
Absolutely, because you're using different words, different grammar.
Different sentence structures.
Yeah, different sentence structures to express the same idea.
So how do we do this? Give us the technique.
Okay, so choose a topic.
Yeah.
Any topic.
Okay.
And then challenge yourself to speak about it in a few different ways.
Okay.
So first, maybe speak slowly and clearly.
Okay, slowly and clearly.
With lots of detail.
Okay.
Then you could try speaking faster.
Okay.
More casually.
Okay.
Like you would in a normal conversation.
More natural.
More natural. And then you could try explaining the same topic using more complex vocabulary.
More advanced vocabulary.
More advanced vocabulary.
Okay.
More complicated sentences.
Longer sentences.
Yeah, longer sentences.
Okay.
So for example, let's say the topic is your job.
My job.
Okay. You could start by saying, I work in a bank.
I work in a bank. Simple.
Simple. Then you could add a bit more detail.
Okay.
I've been working in finance for 5 years and I really enjoy it.
Okay. I work in finance for 5 years and I really enjoy it.
And then you could say something like, my role involves managing client investments and helping them to achieve their financial goals.
My role involves managing client investments and helping them to achieve their financial goals.
Ooh.
Okay, so we're talking about the same thing.
Same thing.
But we're using different vocabulary.
Different vocabulary.
Different grammar.
And different sentence structures.
Okay, so the listener can really understand what we're talking about.
Exactly. And it makes you sound
super smart.
More sophisticated.
More sophisticated.
More fluent.
Yes.
More confident.
It really shows off your skills.
Shows off those English skills.
Yeah, and that will make you feel more confident.
Totally, because you realize, hey, I can actually talk about this in a few different ways.
I have options.
You have options.
Yes.
You're not stuck.
I like it. Okay, so now it's your turn.
Oh, it's challenge time.
It's challenge time. Are you ready for a mini speaking challenge?
Yes, bring it on.
Okay, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to describe your favorite way to spend a free afternoon.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So tell me what you do.
Yeah.
Tell me why you enjoy it.
Uh-huh.
And maybe give us one specific detail
Okay.
that makes it special.
I like it.
So for example, I could say my favorite way to spend a free afternoon is by going for a long walk in the park near my house. I really enjoy being surrounded by nature, and the fresh air always helps me to relax. Last time I went, I saw a family of ducks swimming in the pond, which was really lovely.
Ah, that's nice.
So there's an example for you.
Okay, listener, I want you to pause this deep dive right now
Yes, pause it.
and speak for just 1 minute
1 minute.
about your favorite way to spend a free afternoon.
And don't worry about making mistakes.
Don't worry about being perfect.
Just talk.
Just talk.
Okay.
Off you go.
All right, welcome back.
Welcome back.
So hopefully that got your English juices flowing.
I hope so.
Got you speaking, got you thinking in English.
It's a good warm-up.
It's a good warm-up.
Huh?
So let's quickly recap those 7 practical tips that we went over today.
Okay, let's do it.
Number 1, shadow native speakers daily.
Number 2, use those speaking prompts every day.
Number 3, expand your sentences.
Number 4, think in English.
Number 5, use English in real life as much as possible.
Number 6, correct yourself out loud.
Yes. And number 7, talk about the same topic in different ways.
And remember, consistency is key.
Consistency is key.
With all of these tips, even small, regular efforts over time
yes.
will lead to, big improvements in your fluency and your confidence.
And it's all about building those habits.
Building those habits.
Those daily habits
Yeah.
that get you speaking and using your English.
Absolutely. And remember, fluency isn't about memorizing,
Yeah.
huge lists of vocabulary.
But they're like complicated grammar rules.
No, it's about using what you already know.
Yes. Actively.
Actively.
Using it regularly.
Regularly.
Out loud, out loud, out loud.
That's it.
Yeah, so don't be afraid to speak.
Don't be afraid.
Even if you're nervous.
Even if you make mistakes.
Every time you try.
You're improving.
You are improving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the best way to learn to speak English
Is to speak.
is to speak.
It's as simple as that.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
So now that you've heard all 7 of these amazing practical tips,
Yeah.
I want you to think about
Okay.
which one is going to be the most challenging for you.
Yeah. Which one are you a little bit scared of?
Yeah. And what's one small step,
One little baby step
one little action that you can take today
today.
to start using that tip?
Yeah. Go and do it.
Go and do it straight
Okay.
away. Straight away.
We're waiting.
Okay, so we're diving into something a lot of you have been asking about, how to really get better at speaking English.
Yeah.
And you've given us some really cool stuff to work with today. 3 different podcast scripts.
Yeah.
All about how to improve your speaking.
Uh-huh.
But they're all for different levels. So I've got one for beginners,
Okay.
one for intermediate learners, and then one for advanced.
You know what I really like about these scripts is that they're really practical.
Yeah.
Like they give you concrete things that you can do.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to go through all 3 of these scripts that you sent us,
Okay.
and we're going to pull out like the absolute best tips
Yeah.
and the things that you can start doing right away to speak English more confidently
Right.
and more correctly and more naturally. Okay, so let's start with the beginner level.
Sounds good.
What are some of the things that really jumped out at you?
Well, I think for beginners, it's really all about building a solid foundation.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Like you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And one of the first things that I noticed was that they really emphasize making English a daily habit.
Totally.
Like even if it's just for 5 minutes a day.
5 minutes. Yeah. That's all it takes.
You know, they even gave the example of like just talking to yourself
Uh-huh.
about your daily routine.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I am brushing my teeth.
Right.
Or now I'm eating breakfast. And I think the point of that is,
it seems simple,
Yeah.
but it really helps get your mouth moving.
right.
And to start thinking in English.
Exactly. It's just about like getting comfortable
Yeah.
with those sounds and making it less scary to actually speak.
It's like anything. Like if you just do it a little bit every day,
Yeah,
it becomes a lot less scary.
for sure. And that actually connects to the next tip,
Okay.
which is about using simple sentences.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
Yeah, they even gave a good example. They said instead of saying something like, today I am feeling slightly under the weather, you could just say, I feel sick today.
Exactly.
And it's so much clearer and so much easier to understand.
Especially when you're starting out.
Yeah,
You don't want to overcomplicate things.
Yeah.
Just get your point across.
exactly. Clarity is key.
Yep.
Okay, so another tip that I really liked was about learning useful phrases
Oh, yeah.
instead of just individual words.
Uh-huh.
And they said, like, instead of just memorizing the words go and store and milk,
Right.
you could learn the entire phrase, I'm going to the store to buy milk.
Yeah, because then you have this like chunk of language that
Yeah.
you can use in a real situation.
Exactly. And it's so much more useful than just having like a bunch of random words floating around in your head.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this next one is interesting, and I'm curious to get your take on it. They suggested recording yourself speaking
Ah,
for
interesting.
like 30 seconds
Okay.
and then listening back to it
Yeah.
as a way to kind of like assess yourself and improve your speaking. But I think for a lot of people, that could be kind of scary.
I can see that.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Like, how can people approach this?
I think the key is
Yeah.
to not be too hard on yourself.
Right?
Don't listen to it and be like, oh my God, I sound terrible.
Yeah.
Just listen for like 1 or 2 things that
Yeah.
you could maybe do better. Like maybe your pronunciation of a certain sound.
Right.
Or maybe you're speaking too fast or too slow.
Yeah, just pick one thing to focus on.
Exactly. And the more you do it,
Yeah.
the less scary it becomes. And actually, you can actually start to see your progress, which can be
Interesting.
really motivating.
Absolutely. All right, so another beginner tip that they had was practicing in front of a mirror,
Oh, yeah.
which I thought was kind of fun.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and they even gave like a little topic to practice. They said, hi, I'm your name.
Right.
I like music and movies.
Yeah.
And I guess the idea is that you're not just focusing on the words that you're saying.
Yeah, you're also focusing on your body language.
Yeah.
Your facial expressions,
Right.
all that stuff.
And they actually had a whole section about nonverbal communication.
It's so important. People don't realize.
Like how much we communicate without even saying anything.
Exactly.
Okay, so they also talked about using apps
Oh, yeah.
like HelloTalk and Tandem and Lingby
Uh-huh.
to connect with other people who are learning English
Right.
or even native speakers.
Native speakers, yeah.
Have you ever used any of those?
I've tried a couple of them. I think they can be really helpful,
Yeah.
especially if you're a bit shy about speaking English in person.
Right, because it's like a lower pressure environment.
Exactly. You can just like chat with people.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about making mistakes.
Yeah, exactly. Mistakes are going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
And they actually address that fear of making mistakes.
It's a big one.
Yeah, they had this great little equation, mistakes, learning.
I love that.
Yeah, and they emphasize that everybody makes mistakes.
Even native speakers.
Yeah, even native speakers make mistakes.
All the time.
So the most important thing is just to speak,
Just keep speaking.
even if you make mistakes.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they even included like a little practice dialogue for beginners.
Oh, cool.
I was like, how are you today? I'm good. I went to the market.
Nice.
What did you buy?
Okay.
I bought fruit and bread.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it's so simple.
Simple but effective.
Yeah, but it shows you like how you can actually communicate
Right.
using really basic English.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of great tips for beginners.
Yeah, those are some good foundations.
Yeah. Now let's move on to the intermediate level.
All right, so intermediate level, these are people who
Yeah.
they kind of have the basics down,
Right.
but they want to sound more fluent
Yeah,
and more natural.
exactly. And one of the techniques that they suggested was this thing called shadowing.
Shadowing. Oh, I love shadowing.
Oh, you've done this.
I've done it, yeah.
Okay, so tell us, what is shadowing?
Okay, so basically you listen to a native speaker,
Okay.
like maybe a podcast or a TED Talk or even a movie,
Okay.
and you repeat what they're saying,
Oh, wow.
like right after them.
Okay, so it's like you're their shadow.
Exactly. And you try to copy their intonation, their rhythm, their pronunciation, everything.
And they gave an example. They said, like, if the audio says,
Right.
what are you up to?
Right.
Then you would repeat, what are you up to?
Exactly. And it might feel a little weird at first,
Yeah.
but it really helps you to internalize the sounds of English.
So it's not just about learning the words.
Right.
It's also about learning how to say them.
Exactly. It's about the music of the language.
Yeah, like the rhythm and the intonation and all of that.
All of that.
That's really cool.
It's a fun one.
Yeah. So another intermediate tip was about using speaking prompts
Oh, yeah.
to build fluency. And they gave some examples like,
Okay.
describe your last trip, or what do you do on weekends?
Oh, I like those.
Yeah. So it's kind of like you're giving yourself a little mini speech.
Exactly. And it forces you to think on your feet and
Yeah.
come up with sentences
Right.
without having time to plan,
Exactly.
which is really important for fluency.
Yeah, because in real conversations,
Right.
you don't have time to like write down your answers.
Exactly.
They have to be spontaneous.
You got to be in the moment.
Yes.
Speaking of fluency,
Yeah.
another good tip is to try to expand your sentences.
Oh, yeah. They talked about that.
Yeah. So instead of just saying, I like music,
Right.
you could say, I like music, especially acoustic guitar. I listen to it while I'm working.
Yeah, that's so much more interesting.
Right. It gives you more information.
Yeah, it tells a story.
Yeah.
Okay. They also suggested joining speaking clubs or online groups to practice speaking with other people.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, because even though we talked about the apps,
Right.
I think this is more about like having longer conversations.
Yeah, like real conversations,
Yeah.
not just like quick little chats.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one is a little bit more of a mindset shift.
Yeah.
They talked about trying to think in English
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's a game changer.
instead of translating in your head from
Yeah.
your native language.
Because if you're always translating,
Yeah,
it's going to slow you down.
exactly.
They're never going to be truly fluent.
So how can people actually do that? Like, how can you start thinking in English?
I think it starts with just like little things.
Yeah.
Like start labeling things around you in English
Okay.
in your head.
So like, that's a table.
Exactly. That's a chair.
That's a lamp.
Yeah. And try to have like little conversations with yourself in English.
Like an inner monologue.
Exactly.
Okay, that's really interesting.
And it takes time.
Yeah.
But the more you do it, the easier it becomes.
And they also talked about correcting yourself out loud.
Oh, yeah. I love that one.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
So if you make a mistake,
Yeah.
instead of just like thinking about it in your head, you actually say the correction out loud.
Exactly. So like if you say, he go to work, you would immediately say, he goes to work.
Yes.
And it feels a little weird,
Yeah.
but it really helps to reinforce the correct grammar in your brain.
And it shows that you're aware of the mistake.
Exactly. You're like, I know I made a mistake. I'm fixing it.
Yeah, it's like active learning.
It is. It is.
Okay. And then the last intermediate tip that I want to talk about was this exercise.
Okay.
Where they said to take a topic like your job
Right.
and explain it in 3 different ways.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So first, you would give like a 1-minute basic explanation.
Okay.
Then a more detailed planet explanation, and then a really quick 30-second summary.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they said this helps you to be more flexible with your speaking.
Yeah, because sometimes you need to be able to give a quick summary.
Right.
Sometimes you need to go into more detail.
Exactly.
It's good to be able to do both.
So it's all about being adaptable.
Adaptable, that's the word.
Yeah. Okay. So we've covered some really great intermediate tips. Now let's move on to the advanced level.
Our advanced level. So these are people who, they pretty much have it all down.
Right. They've got a really good grasp of English.
Yeah. They're fluent.
Yeah.
They have a good vocabulary, but they want to sound even more natural.
Right.
Like a native speaker.
Exactly. So what were some of the advanced tips that they gave?
Well, one of the biggest things is spontaneity.
Okay.
Like being able to just speak without thinking too much.
Without any preparation.
Without any preparation.
Yeah.
So they suggested setting a timer for like 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
And just talking about a topic.
With no notes.
With no notes.
Wow. No planning.
That sounds so hard.
It is hard.
Yeah.
But it's so good for you.
What kind of topics did they suggest?
They had some interesting ones, like, is failure important in life?
Oh, wow.
Or what motivates you?
That's deep.
Yeah, these are topics that make you think.
Yeah.
And you have to come up with ideas.
Right.
And express them in English.
In real time.
In real time.
Yeah.
On the spot.
That's a really great exercise.
Yeah. And to make it even more challenging, they suggested improvising dialogues.
Oh, so like role playing.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So like imagine you're at a job interview.
Okay.
Or you're ordering food at a restaurant. Or you're talking on the phone.
Right.
And you have to come up with both sides of the conversation.
So you're playing both roles.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it really helps you to think quickly.
Yeah.
And to use a variety of vocabulary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a good one.
Okay, so they also talked about mastering collocation.
Collocations, yes.
Which are like those natural combinations of words.
Yeah, so like instead of saying do a decision, you'd say make a decision.
Yeah, or take responsibility.
Sex.
Do responsibility.
Yeah, these are things that native speakers just know, but learners often get wrong.
Right.
So it's really important to pay attention to these collocations because they can make a big difference in how natural you sound.
And they also talked about word stress.
Oh, yeah. Word stress is huge.
Yeah. They gave the example of he did it versus he did it.
Yeah. And it completely changes the meaning depending on where you put the stress.
And this is something that I think a lot of learners struggle with.
Yeah, because it's not always obvious where the stress should go.
Yeah.
So it's something that you really have to pay attention to and practice.
Okay, so for advanced learners, they also suggested recording yourself. But this time, talking about more complex topics.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like politics or philosophy or business.
So like really challenging topics.
Yeah, and then listening back and trying to identify areas where you could improve.
Yeah, like maybe you're using too many filler words or maybe you're pausing too much or maybe your grammar isn't quite perfect.
Right, so it's like taking it to the next level.
Exactly. It's about fine-tuning your speaking.
Yeah.
Polishing it up.
Okay, so this next tip is really interesting. They talked about incorporating emotion into your speaking.
Oh, yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, and they said, like, you can practice this by role-playing different scenarios. Like being sarcastic or humorous or angry or happy.
Right, because in real life,
yeah,
we don't just speak in a monotone.
No, we use our voices to express how we're feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they gave a good example. They said, like, the phrase, that's just great. Can sound completely different.
Totally different.
Depending on your intonation.
Yeah, you could say it sarcastically or you could say it genuinely.
Exactly.
And it all depends on your tone of voice.
And they suggested another really cool exercise.
Okay.
Which was to take an idea and explain it to different audiences.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so like imagine you're explaining your job to a child, then to a coworker, and then to a professor.
Yeah, that's really challenging.
Yeah, because you'd have to use different vocabulary, different sentence structure.
Different levels of formality.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like really making you think about how to adapt your speaking to different situations.
To different people.
Yeah. And then the last advanced tip was this idea of reflective speaking.
Reflective speaking. That's a new one.
Yeah. So they said, like, at the end of the day, you could just talk to yourself about your day.
Like a little recap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they said, like, focus on what went well, what you could improve on, and what you're grateful for.
I like that.
Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting that they connected this to speaking practice.
Because it is. You're still practicing your speaking,
Yeah.
but you're also reflecting on your day,
Right.
which is a good thing to do anyway.
Exactly. Okay, and then to wrap up the advanced section, they gave a final practice topic.
All right, bring it on.
It was technology's impact on society.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. And they challenged listeners to use all of the techniques that we've been talking about
Okay.
to really speak about this topic in a sophisticated and nuanced way.
So using complex vocabulary and grammar and being able to express their ideas clearly,
Exactly.
that's the goal.
So we've gone through a lot today.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we've talked about tips for beginners, intermediate learners, and advanced learners.
For everyone,
And I think the main takeaway is that,
consistent practice is key.
yeah, like no matter what level you're at,
Yeah.
if you want to improve your speaking, you have to practice consistently
Exactly. And you have to find ways to make it fun
Yes.
and engaging.
so that you'll actually stick with it.
Exactly.
So as you're listening to this, I want you to think about which of these tips
Yeah.
really resonated with you
Yeah.
and which ones you could start using today.
Today.
Yeah, even just one small change
Yeah.
can make a big difference over time.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been fun.
We'll see you next time.
See you later.
Okay, so you're listening to English podcasts, right? You love English language movies. You've got this like massive vocabulary. But then when you try to actually speak, it's like hitting a wall. The words just won't come out. Sound familiar?
Yeah, seems very familiar. It's a really common experience, actually, even for people who have been studying English for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. And today we're going to little deep dive into why this happens. And more importantly, we'll give you some solid tools to break through that barrier between, knowing the words and actually speaking them. I mean, think about it. You probably know thousands of English words already. So the question is, why isn't all that knowledge translating into like effortless conversation?
That's the million-dollar question. And there are actually several reasons why this happens. It's not just one thing.
Right. So let's unpack the first big reason, this idea of passive versus active fluency.
So basically, the way we usually learn languages, especially as adults, is by reading, listening, watching, write. And through all that input, you develop what we call passive fluency. It means you can recognize and understand a huge number of words when you see or hear them, like reading a book or listening to us right now.
Right. So it's like, you see someone on the street, but you can't remember their name. You can recognize their face, but you can't actively recall the information.
Exactly. Perfect analogy. And that's the key insight here. Understanding isn't the same as speaking. It's one thing to recognize a word when you see it written or hear it spoken, but it's a whole other ballgame to actually use that word yourself in a conversation.
What's like, recognizing a familiar face versus actually being able to introduce that person to someone else. You know who they are, but bringing them into a conversation, that's a different skill.
Precisely. And that's why even if you consume tons of English content, it doesn't automatically make you a fluent speaker. You need to actively use what you know. So active fluency is all about being able to spontaneously recall and use those words in real-time conversation. It's about producing the language, not just understanding it.
So understanding is kind of like the raw material, but speaking is about actually building something with it.
Exactly. And that requires a different type of practice. For example, you might understand a bunch of verbs, but actually using them correctly in different tenses with the right grammar in a fast-paced conversation, well, that requires a different kind of brain power.
Okay, so that's the first hurdle. Understanding isn't the same as speaking. Now, another big obstacle for a lot of advanced learners, and this is where it gets kind of interesting, is this tendency to aim for perfection instead of just communication.
Right, and this is so common. You want to express yourself perfectly, to find exactly the right word or structure, to make sure your grammar is impeccable. But all that thinking and searching can lead to hesitation, which often leads to, silence.
Yeah, totally. It's like you're searching for that perfect word or phrase, and while you're thinking, the moment passes. Or you just end up not saying anything at all, like your brain freezes under the pressure of being perfect.
Right, and it's ironic because think about how native speakers talk. We make mistakes all the time. We use filler words, we hesitate, we rephrase things. Our speech isn't always grammatically perfect, but we still get our message across.
So it's almost like by trying to be too perfect, we end up sounding less natural and less fluent.
Exactly. And the key shift here is to prioritize communication over perfection. Focus on getting your message across, even if it's not perfectly phrased.
But hold on, isn't accuracy important too? I mean, we don't want to encourage people to just ignore grammar altogether.
Of course, accuracy is important, especially in the long run. But in the beginning stages of building fluency, the priority needs to be on developing the habit of speaking without overthinking or self-correcting too much in the moment.
So it's like, don't worry too much about making mistakes in the beginning. Just focus on getting those words out.
Exactly. The goal is to train your brain to think and speak in English more automatically, without having to constantly analyze everything. And the more you practice speaking, the better you'll get at both fluency and accuracy. It's like learning any skill, really.
Right. Okay, so we've covered the gap between understanding and speaking and the trap of perfectionism. Now let's dig into another big reason why knowing lots of words doesn't equal fluency. It's the lack of specific practice for spontaneous speaking.
This is huge. Think about how most of us study English. We read articles, write essays, listen to podcasts, all of which are super valuable. But they don't really train you for the specific demands of real-time, unplanned conversation.
That's a great point. Reading and writing give you time to think, to plan your sentences, to look up words. Listening is about receiving information. But speaking requires you to think on your feet, to come up with responses quickly without that planning time.
Exactly. And that's a different skill set. It's like the difference between practicing your golf swing at the driving range and actually playing around on the course.
But if someone already has a huge passive vocabulary, wouldn't some of that naturally transfer over to their speaking?
To some extent, yes. But the bottleneck is in the retrieval and production processes. It's one thing to have a large vocabulary stored in your brain, but it's another thing to be able to access and use those words quickly and effectively in the heat of the moment.
So it's like having a huge library but not knowing how to find the right book when you need it.
Exactly. That's why dedicated speaking practice is so crucial. It trains your brain to quickly find and use the words you need, even under pressure.
Okay, so we understand why this fluency gap exists. Now let's move on to the solutions. The pro hacks. These are actionable strategies you can start using today to close that gap. And the first one is what we call speaking sprints.
Speaking sprints, my favorite. I love these because they are so simple but so effective. Basically, you pick any topic, anything at all. It could be something like my dream vacation, or the most interesting person I've ever met, or even how I make my morning coffee.
Right. And then you set a timer start with 1 minute, and you just talk continuously on that topic without stopping. Don't worry about making mistakes or using fancy vocabulary. Just keep the words flowing.
The goal is to get comfortable with the feeling of speaking under pressure without overthinking. And then you gradually increase the time, do it for 2 minutes, then 3 minutes, pushing yourself to speak for longer and longer periods.
And what I love about this is that it forces you to think and speak in English in real time. You don't have time to translate in your head or search for the perfect word. You just have to go with the flow.
Exactly. It's like a mental workout for your speaking muscles.
And a bonus tip is to record yourself during those speaking sprints and then listen back or even transcribe what you said. This can help you identify patterns in your speech, like hesitation words, filler words, or even grammatical errors you might not be aware of.
It's like getting a bird's eye view of your speaking habits. And by becoming aware of those patterns, you can start to consciously work on improving them.
All right, pro hack number 2, transformation drills, which is all about activating your passive vocabulary and making those words you understand part of your active speech. So let's say the word is resilient. You probably know what it means, but how often do you actually use it in conversation?
Yeah, and that's the point. The drill is super simple. You take a new word, like resilient, and you create 3 personalized sentences using that word. The key is to make the sentences relevant to your own life, your experiences, your interests.
So, for example, you could say, my friend is so resilient, she always bounces back from setbacks. Or, I need to be more resilient when things get tough at work.
Exactly. And the crucial step is to say those sentences out loud. Don't just write them down. Actually speak them. Get your mouth and brain used to producing those words.
And by making those sentences personal, you're creating a stronger connection with the word, which makes it easier to recall and use in the future.
Right. You're taking it from your passive vocabulary and moving it into your active vocabulary.
Okay, moving on to a technique that takes basic shadowing to the next level. Shadowing with emotion, not just sound. Now, most advanced learners are familiar with shadowing, which is simply repeating what you hear. But this is about more than just mimicking the words.
Yeah, this is about really getting into the emotional content of the speech. It's about paying attention not only to what's being said, but how it's being said. So, for example, imagine someone saying, I don't buy that for a second.
Right, and you could repeat that phrase in a flat, robotic way. But to really capture the nuance, you have to consider the context, the emotion behind it. Is it sarcastic, skeptical,
Yeah.
angry?
Exactly. So when you shadow this phrase, you're not just repeating the words, you're trying to replicate the intonation, the emphasis, the emotion behind them. It's about imitating the speaker's attitude and energy, not just the sounds.
So it's like learning the music of the language, not just the notes.
Yes, exactly. And by practicing this way, you develop a more intuitive understanding of how native speakers use language to express themselves, which makes your own speech sound more natural and fluent.
All right, pro hack number 4 is all about simulating real conversations through role play. And the best part is you don't always need a partner to do this.
Right. And this is so important because a lot of learners feel limited by not having regular opportunities to speak with native speakers, but you can create those opportunities yourself by simply rehearsing common scenarios out loud.
So think about everyday situations like ordering coffee, asking for directions, making a doctor's appointment, or even just chatting with a colleague at work.
Exactly. And the key is to actually say the words out loud, even if you're by yourself. You can practice in front of a mirror or with a friend if you have one available, or even use some of the AI language tools out there.
And make it a habit. Aim for at least one role play scenario per day, and you'll be amazed at how much more comfortable you become with using English in different situations.
And finally, we have pro hack number 5, embracing messy speech. This one is all about letting go of that need to be perfect, which we talked about earlier.
Yeah, because fluency isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about being able to communicate effectively, even if you make a few mistakes along the way.
Exactly. Even native speakers pause, hesitate, rephrase, and use filler words all the time. It's part of natural speech.
And in fact, those little imperfections can actually make your speech sound more authentic and engaging.
Exactly. So record yourself speaking, listen back, and ask yourself, does it sound natural? Does it sound like how people actually talk? Or does it sound stiff and robotic?
And if it sounds a bit messy, that's okay. Embrace the messiness. It's part of the process of becoming fluent.
Okay, so we've covered 5 awesome pro hacks for boosting your fluency.
Yeah.
But how do you actually put all this into practice? How do you make it part of your regular learning routine?
Well, let's lay out a sample weekly routine that combines listening and speaking to help you make real progress. So on Monday, you could start by watching a short English video and then shadowing it, focusing on both the words and the emotion, like we discussed earlier.
Tuesday could be for your speaking sprints. Choose a topic and speak for 3 minutes, pushing yourself to maintain a continuous flow. On Wednesday, learn 5 new expressions and practice using them in your own sentences.
Then on Thursday, record yourself telling a short 1-minute story. This is a great way to practice speaking without interruption and to get comfortable with the sound of your own voice.
Friday could be for role play practice. Pick a common scenario, like ordering food at a restaurant, and rehearse it out loud. And then on Saturday, take some time to reflect on your week and talk about it in English. Just chat with yourself about what you did, what you learned, what you're looking forward to.
And on Sunday, you can review your progress, identify areas where you want to improve, and plan for the week ahead. The key is to be consistent and to make speaking a regular part of your routine.
And remember, this is just a sample routine. You can adjust it to fit your own schedule and preferences. The important thing is to find a way to incorporate both listening and speaking practice into your week.
Now, to help you put all of this into practice, we want to give you a quick fluency drill right here, right now. So for everyone listening, here's your prompt. Talk about a skill you're currently trying to learn.
I'll go first. So I'm actually trying to learn how to code right now. It's a bit challenging, but I'm finding it really rewarding. I'm using online tutorials and practicing a little bit each day. I'm hoping to eventually build my own website.
Okay, so now it's your turn. Take a minute and talk about a skill you're working on. It could be anything, playing a musical instrument, cooking, a new sport, whatever. Just try to speak for a full minute without stopping. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just focus on getting those words out.
As you're speaking, pay attention to how you feel. Do you find yourself hesitating? Are you searching for certain words? This is a great way to assess your current fluency and identify areas where you can focus your practice.
All right, welcome back. Hopefully you had a chance to try that out. Now let's wrap things up and summarize some key takeaways from today's deep dive.
So, if you feel like you have a strong English vocabulary, but your speaking fluency isn't quite there yet, remember that you already have the foundation. The key is to activate that knowledge, to practice speaking regularly, and to embrace the imperfections of real-life conversation.
Exactly. It's about shifting your mindset from perfect English to real English, the kind of English that native speakers actually use, with all its pauses, filler words, and rephrasing.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are inevitable, and they're actually a valuable part of the learning process.
So our final thought for you today is this. You're not just learning English words, you're becoming a fluent communicator. And the best way to achieve that fluency is to use your existing knowledge actively and consistently, out loud, every day.
We hope this episode has given you some valuable insights and practical strategies to help you on your journey to greater fluency.
Thanks for joining us today on The Deep Dive.
See you next time.